Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. This is Success with Srini.
Welcome back to Success with Srini. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Before I get into today's podcast episode, I have an announcement to make. And that is, starting today, officially, this podcast is available on YouTube, in my YouTube channel. For a long time, we have been struggling. I have been struggling. My team had been struggling to somehow take the audio podcast and make it available as a video on YouTube. It's very hard to sync the two because video is what YouTube is all about and podcast is all about audio. It was very hard to kind of mix these two, but officially starting today, we are available on YouTube. It's not an absolute the best way to do it, but somehow we figured this out. I've been trying to do this for a while now, and some of the earlier podcast episodes are also available as a video now on YouTube. So I want you to go to my YouTube channel. All you have to do is go to youtube.com or open up your YouTube app on your smart device and search for Success with Srini and check out today's podcast as a video. I want you to check it out. And you can leave me a comment on my video on my YouTube channel. So that being said, let's get into today's podcast, which is about having a prayer in place. It's about having a communication with the divine. It's about expressing our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings to the Almighty. Now, whether you believe in God or you do not believe in God, it doesn't matter. All of us, each one of us, we have our own higher power. We have our own God, whatever that is to each one of us. But then the discussion is that there has to be a communication. There has to be a word or an exchange of thoughts, ideas, concepts, feelings, emotions, thoughts with the higher power. And there is power in doing it, and that is the message on today's podcast. And why I am doing this is because somebody asked me a question about this recently. And I was thinking, how can I bring that question into this podcast? And turns out, years ago, when I was running my practice, I had an office, I had people coming to see me, and I was running a hypnosis practice. And I remember this individual walking in and complaining about how they tried everything and nothing worked. And they're giving hypnosis the last chance, the last try. And if hypnosis doesn't work, they're going to completely leave. They're going to completely quit pursuing the solution to the problem, which was very funny. And I said, let's assume for a second, let's consider the fact that hypnosis will not work for you. What will you do? And they said, I'll go back praying. Interesting. You'll go back to prayer? I said, have you stopped praying? Oh, no, I have not stopped praying. But I'll go back to prayer because prayer seems to work. It was interesting when this individual said this. I said, okay, fine. Prayer works. They, yeah, prayer works. I said, okay, great. What do you do in your prayer? How do you pray? That was my question. They were like, I do this, I do that. I ask. Sometimes I get angry. Why God is not doing these things for me? I'm the best child of God. I said, amazing, No, there's nothing wrong to get angry at God. You have all the right as a child, as his child or her child, to get angry. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. In fact, I should be getting more angrier in my prayers, which I don't do. This was me telling them. And this individual walks me through their prayer sequence. And I ask for the sequence. Say, what do you do? How do you start? Do you go to a place of worship or do you sit down anywhere? How do you do this? Well, I go to a place of worship and I do these things. So they walk me through their entire sequence. And I said, listen, it sounds to me that you are changing God's mind about you, isn't it? And you agree with me that God already knows who you are, understands your pain, understands your suffering, and is taking care of the whole world, the whole universe. Is that a fair assessment? Is that a fair statement to make? And this individual says, yes, that's true. If that is true, aren't you trying to change God's mind about you with your prayer? At least that's how it sounds to me. And they say, yes. Isn't it true that instead you should be changing your mind about God with a prayer? Yeah, I think so. Is it okay with you if I spend the rest of the time with you and help you change your mind about God with your prayer? Is it okay if I reconstruct your prayer? And they agreed. I'll tell you why I did this. In fact, they were not there in the room asking me to help them with their prayer. That was not the ask. The reason why I went there is because as a hypnotherapist, as any therapist for that matter, one of the elements that we look for is how can we use the existing belief system of a client or a subject and work with their belief system to create the results rather than enforcing our belief systems into them or onto them. So a good therapist always uses the existing belief system and works with it. Obviously, I could see that their belief system was tied into prayer. They have given up on everything and they're trying hypnosis as the only way. So my job is not to promote hypnosis, but to help them use whatever they already know and build a few elements of hypnosis into it. So which I did. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this on this podcast is because I see this. Many people, they have their prayer sequence incorrect. Prayer is a very powerful mechanism. It's a connection with the divine. And it's a communication within which you are communicating with something that's not going to respond to you, or not in a way that you expect, or not at a level, at a pace that you expect. So there is no immediate response. I do radio shows, I get immediate response. I do this podcast, I get some response. Not immediately, but some response. So there is response to everything we do in normal life. There is no response, or at least immediate response, that we do specifically in a prayer situation, or things that we tell ourselves or that we tell to our higher self. Now, why do people pray? Prayer, in general, is used for guidance, is used for strength, is used for protection. And if you go back in time, 100, 200, 300 years ago, prayer was used to fight diseases, to heal the human body. And you go into shamanic rituals, you go into different cultures, you see that prayer was used. And I have made this point multiple times here on this podcast too. People used to chant and drum. All these acts are to heal the human body. And when you tie that into a prayer mechanism, it's powerful. So the mindset behind a prayer is the divine is your friend. Whatever that higher power is, the divine is, that's your friend. And we're having a conversation with a friend. And in a conversation with a friend, it's natural for us to become angry. It's natural for us to become pensive. It's natural to become also a little bit defensive and also offensive, if need be. It's natural. It's a friendship. So there was nothing wrong with the way this individual was communicating, or the way they expressed their prayer, their sequence. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, a prayer, there's nothing right or wrong to a prayer. It can be done by anyone, in any format, anywhere. But the idea is that with a prayer, you go inward into yourself rather than outward to the outer world. So I don't go into a prayer asking for things or making the world change according to me and asking for everything to happen for me. Rather, I go inward and say, what can I do to happen for others? Or what can I do so things could happen for me? What is that I can do? How can you help me strengthen, help me become powerful, help me become more meaningful, help me so that I can? Please do it for me so that I can. Or please make everything else happen for me so that I can. You see? So that's the sequencing we are talking here. That's the kind of a mindset we are talking here. Now, there is a scientific way to look into this, and I want to put a little bit of science into this discussion and give a different angle, different perspective. You see, every time we speak with some intent. And I'm doing this podcast. I had an intent before I started recording this. And as a part of that intent, I'm the sender. And what am I sending? I'm sending an idea. I'm sending maybe a thought, maybe a feeling, maybe a suggestion, or maybe I'm ordering something. Something I'm doing. So I'm a sender, I have an idea. And then I'm encoding that idea with some words. Maybe some pictures. If you're watching this on YouTube, that means I'm encoding this with a video. So there are words, there are pictures, there are videos, or there are some other actions. So something, I'm encoding the message with something. And this podcast happens to be my words. I'm encoding this with words, specifically in this example. And then I'm using a channel. A channel is this podcast, or channel is the YouTube, so that I can get it out to the receiver. And the receiver is going to receive this, which is you, by the way, and you're going to now decode this. You're going to get my expression. If I've done this right, you'll understand where I'm coming from and what I'm trying to say, and you understand my feelings, you'll understand my thoughts. If you do this, if I come across to you, that means I have done everything right. So you have successfully decoded this. The only way I'll come to know that you have successfully decoded this is when you acknowledge back to me. That means you write a review, you write a comment, you ask a question. That's how I will come to know that you have successfully decoded this. If not, I would not know. This is how a prayer works. Let me put myself as the individual who is praying. So I have an intent and I have to turn that intent. I'm the sender of the prayer. And I have a thought, I have an idea, I have a request, I have an ask, I have a complaint, I have an appreciation, whatever it is. I have that in my mind. That's the idea. And I'm going to encode this in words, maybe in some pictures, maybe in some videos. I mean, there's no way to do that in videos, but I'm going to encode that into words, maybe into rhymes, or maybe into prose. I don't know. I'm going to encode this. Typically, when we talk about prayer, we talk about words and phrases. These words and phrases have emotions, our emotions in them, our thoughts in them, our requests in them, our complaints in them. And who are we sending to? Well, we are sending to the divine, to the higher power. And we need a channel. What is the channel? The channel is wherever, at a place of worship or in the open or wherever you want to do it. That's the channel. And the receiver is the higher power, the God, your God, whatever that God is. That's who is receiving this. He or she, whoever that is, receiving this. And they're going to decode this and they're going to acknowledge. A prayer, you are using a channel, you are sending it. You don't know if they're going to be decoding this. You don't know if they're going to acknowledge. But here is what we know. The more you pray, the more you take the divine seriously. Interesting. And whatever it is, if the divine is listening to you or not listening to you, at some point, as a part of the proceedings on this earth, things will happen for you. If things happen for you, then you say, yes, the divine, the higher power, the God has responded, acknowledged. If they are not happening and you are doing this seriously over and over and over again for a long amount of time, it means your time has not come. As simple as that. But something beautiful is happening while you are not getting that acknowledgement. And that is that you are going more and more inward. That means you are giving more and more attention to yourself. When you give attention to yourself, that means you are making yourself more and more responsible for the outcomes. It's amazing. The more you pray, the more powerful you become. This was the gist of the conversation I had with this individual. I wanted to share this with you on the podcast, and I'm hoping that today's podcast will make you take prayer seriously regardless of your belief system. And whether you believe in God, you don't believe in God, that's not the point. The point is that when you go and you follow a simple sender idea encoding channel, receiving, decoding, acknowledging, you follow this formula, then you go more and more inward. And I'll tell you something interesting, and I said this multiple times, which is that the path to divine is through the unconscious mind. So the more you activate the unconscious mind, the higher are the chances that you will reach and you will convey and you will converse and you will have a conversation with the divine. That's all for now. Wherever you are, be safe, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Stay tuned.